Welcome back to the channel, guys. Today we're looking at the Tiny Trainer from 533. This one is the HDZero version. I'm Jeff with Titan FPV, and you're going to acquire some knowledge today. First order of business, if you're not already subscribed, stop what you're doing, hit that subscription, click that notification bell, so you'll be sure to be updated of all new content when I release it to the channel. Evan Turner wanted a smaller frame that he could train for races in his backyard, and he came up with this. It's based off the DRL Racer 4. Now, the Tiny Trainer is nothing new. It's been out, I believe, for a couple years, but I finally got my hands on a frame, and I went ahead and did a build. So as you see, mine does have the teal 533 theme for all my TPU parts. I'll post a link here in the video description down below. You can find a list of all these parts on Thingiverse. For the camera mount, I went for the Predator camera mount. I'm using the HDZero Nano V1 camera. Initially, I went with the original Runcam HD, the orange camera, and the video quality was just lacking. So Ryan Quillette suggested definitely swapping over to the HDZero Nano, and that has made all the difference. Now, the Nano V2 is now out. It does offer a little bit better image quality as well as a 4x3 mode. I may be picking that camera up and reviewing that one shortly as well. For the motors, I went with these Flash Hobby Arthur 1404 4300 kV motors. Heads up, FPV recommends the Tiny Turner motors. They are also a 1404, but they're in 4533 kV, so a little bit higher kV. Also, these Flash Hobby, that's formerly DYS company, they have a 1.5 millimeter shaft, and the Tiny Turners have a 2 millimeter shaft. But these are what I had lying around, and that's what I went with. This is a 3S build. Now, for the flight controller and all-in-one ESC, I went with the JHE MCU Pro. This is the 25 amp version. I believe it's their second generation of flight controller. I had a good experience with the original one, and I picked a couple of these up, so that's what I went with this build. For the VTX, I'm using the Sharkbite or the original HDZero Whoop VTX. It's power switchable from 25 milliwatt on up to 200 milliwatts. For the antenna, we're running the True RC OCP right-hand circular polarized antenna. I did use this mount from the Thingiverse link, but I did have to upscale this, I believe, to 101% because the True RC antenna is a little bit bigger than the Triumph Pro antenna. For the receiver, you already know we're running Express LRS. This is the Happy Model EP2 with the ceramic antenna. Now, I did remix a file. I'll credit the designer here in the video description, but I just remixed it to where I could mount it on the post here. So it's a great all-in-one solution to keep this one secure. Now, one of the great features about this frame is you don't need a battery strap. There's this included TPU mount, or the frame that I bought didn't include the TPU parts. It just included the carbon, the hardware, and this smoked injection molded canopy. 533 does offer a teal colored canopy as well, and they also offer HDZero compatible versions, but I made this one HDZero compatible by dremeling out some of the excess plastic. So you can see I fit the original Whoop VTX in there. Now, it is a tight fit. That's one thing I do say for this build. It's not for beginners. You can pick this up from Get FPV as a bind and fly. They do come in analog and HDZero versions. I believe it was originally sold in an FPV crate, and they've since shut down the FPV crate website. On the XT30 Power leads, I'm running this cap. It's a 16 volt, 100 microfarad capacitor. There's just not room inside the build. As you'll see, everything is really tight in here. I do have LEDs. This is the Tiny's LED kit. It consists of the pod light as well as rows of LEDs on each arm. I'll plug them up and I'll show you how those look. This is one of the coolest things about a Tiny Trainer build. Do not leave the LEDs out. I believe they're required for spec racing. This build wouldn't qualify for spec racing because I'm not using the Tiny Turner motors. Regardless, you definitely want some bling and these LEDs. Now I do have the Larson scanner preset set up on these in just a single color. There is an RX and TX input. I do believe you can change them with your transmitter if you have a switch set up. If there's enough interest, I may post a how-to for that in another video, but I just have mine set up with the blue or the teal and the Larson scanner. Looks really good, but yeah, that's enough for me. For the LEDs, I did mount the pod light with some double-sided sticky tape to the top of the canopy, and then I just plugged in each of the arm LEDs. So if you have to do any kind of modifications to Betaflight, or you have to open the build up, it's a big pain in the ass. So I never knew that I needed zip ties so much in FPV until I built this frame. So each arm is secured with these zip ties. I believe there's 4 or 8 that comes in the kit, but if you have to make any modifications, you're going to need some more zip ties. I use these thin, short zip ties, so keep that in mind. You will want to do all your setup and test everything before you seal the canopy up, because it's going to be a big pain to open that back up and then remove everything. I'm using the UAV Tech presets for the toothpick. I'm running 4.2.11. I still haven't switched over to 4.3, but it's flying smooth, minimal prop wash. I do believe I could probably go with a higher pitch prop. These are the Gem Fan 3016s, but I am running a lower KV than suggested. The Foxeer 3028s might be a better choice with a higher pitch for this motor setup. If you're racing, I just been freestyling this one. I'm not competing with this build. It's just a fun build to fly around in my yard. I do have the fin. There is a one with a flip stick if you're planning to race. I believe you can put some PTFE tubing in there. I didn't print that version. I just wanted mine for the looks. And like I said, I went with the teal TPU. I'm using SaneSmart TPU. I'll also post a link for that in the video description. Some of the best printing TPU that I've found. Works great on my stock Prusa i3 camera. You can adjust the angle. We're looking at about probably what, 20, 25 now, I would say. There are some fixed mounts, but I like the ability to adjust my camera angle. Now to get the HDZero Nano V1 in, I did have to run a washer along with the screws, so it's a tight fit. I don't want your camera bobbing up and down. You're gonna get some jello in the footage, so I found like this has been a good solution. As I mentioned earlier, there's no battery strap. You do have this TPU print. And the batteries that I went with the China Hobby line. This is a 3S 450. This one is not an HV. And then I went with these Cotter 3S 500 milliamp hour batteries. These are HVs. I think 533 recommends the Tattoo R-Line 550s. But even though these are 450s, sometimes China Hobby Line cheats on their storage capacity. These are a tight fit. So you can get these in here, but you do want to watch these screw heads because it's kind of difficult. So I'll show you the fit of this one. Now the TPU does stretch out over time, but like I said, it is a tight fit. So, and then you even get it on there all the way. But it works fine. You can just press at the front, lift up. Like I said, it is a bit of a struggle to get in and out, and you may damage this wrap on the battery there doing so. So just keep that in mind. There, it's coming out. Now the Cotter batteries, the 500s, they go in much more smoothly. Not a problem getting those in and out. This will stretch out over time. And if you have any problems getting them in the first time, you can use a heat gun. Just don't heat the print up for too long. And that'll make the fit a little bit easier. The frame is running a one-piece bottom plate. It's 2mm thick carbon. I am running 4 screws. I mean, you can run only 2 if you want. I did use this Emax fabric tape to secure all my wires. I do have the LEDs, like I said, secured on each arm with a thin strip of double-sided mounting tape. The way I trimmed out the canopy, you can actually fit in the update cable when you need to update the firmware on your HDZero VTX. Now, I don't believe that there is a cut. Actually, there is a cutout at the bottom. If you have a flight controller that has a bottom mount micro USB, this JHE MCU, it's coming out the side at an angle like most of the toothpick flight controllers are. So I would have to pull this apart to do any kind of updates or changes there, minus what I can do inside of Betaflight OSD. ExpressLRS developers have announced that there may be an option in the future to update Betaflight settings wirelessly via their receiver. I don't know what version of Betaflight you'll need for that to be compatible with, but that may be an option for us in the future. So hopefully ExpressLRS will push that out. I have a lot of faith that they're going to bring that update soon because they always do. Let's go ahead and get a weight. Now this is kind of a heavy build, I believe, for a 3-inch. The dry weight is coming in at about 125.5 grams. With the 3S 450 coming in at about 170 grams. I believe this 500 is going to be lighter, 163 grams. In comparison, this Tadpole 3-inch from Armatan, 89.7 grams, so almost 90 grams. So this tiny trainer is roughly 35 grams heavier. And this is also an HDZero build. So the canopy is dual purpose. It does offer as a diffuser for the LEDs, as well as it keeps grass and debris from getting to your electronic components. Freestyling this build, I was getting about 4 to 5 minutes, just depending on my flight style, just depending on which battery I used. I am running RPM filtering on this one and BlueJay ESC firmware. So if you're thinking about doing a micro build, this is going to be a good option, especially for you racers out there and just general flyers. It's a fun build. I would recommend this for your first build. Even if you've got a couple builds under your belt, you should be able to accomplish this. The soldering is, typical for these all-in-one flight controllers, but it's just the way you have to fit components. You have to plan out how you're going to do your layout and make sure that you can fit everything in there. I was just able to fit those pod light LEDs in there on top of the HDZero Whoop VTX. So thanks again for tuning in, guys. Remember, if you're not already subscribed, please do so. Leave a comment down below. Give this video a thumbs up. And as always, we'll catch you in the next one.